This is Joeu. I'm the chairman of the Fatherhood Coalition in Massachusetts, and I'm here to introduce the following recording that was made at the July 8th nomination hearing by the Massachusetts Governor's Council. The Governor's Council is authorized by the state constitution to review and approve or reject nominations for judgeships in the state. And so the Fatherhood Coalition, since last summer, has been monitoring the council hearings and has been encouraging the council to vigorously inquire of the nominees their positions on various issues that we consider of utmost importance to men and fathers, and by consequence, by extension, to families in Massachusetts. These issues include the Mass General Law Restraining Order, domestic abuse laws, child custody laws, child support laws, and divorce laws. To date, the council has been very disappointing to us in that the members have not vigorously investigated the nominees' positions on a number of issues that we think are very important. And so the hearing on July 8th was emblematic of the type of hearings that the council holds for individuals who are going to be placed in positions of great power as judges in the state of Massachusetts. The third branch of government, we have the legislature, the executive, and the judiciary. As the third branch of government, the judiciary is an unaccountable and a regime unto itself once the individual is placed in the position of a judge. So we have been encouraging and will be continuing to encourage the Governor's Council to be more aggressive in its questioning of these nominees in relation to the issues that we consider of utmost importance. It's their constitutional duty, and we believe that in many ways they've been derelict in following their responsibility in this regard. There was one instance in the hearing on July 8th where the council did raise an issue of utmost importance, and that was regarding the matter of recusal. The nominee, attorney Margaret Guzman, who was nominated to be a judge in Dudley, Massachusetts, was asked whether she would recuse herself if an attorney who had just moments before appeared for her at this hearing were to appear before her if she was a judge in a case before her. Attorney Guzman unhesitatingly answered no, she would not recuse herself. After some prodding by some council members, the weakness of this stance was made apparent to the attorney, and she unconvincingly said that she would consider recusal if this situation were to arise. This is emblematic of the type of attitude by lawyers and judges in the state, that there is another set of laws and rules for them as opposed to the general population. The idea of impropriety by a judge who is looking at a case when someone that is on their side personally or professionally is on one side of the case is something that they don't consider reason to be reason enough to recuse themselves from a case, even though the judicial rules state that they should. So the hearing, as you'll see, is divided into three parts. The first part is usually testimony by supporters and opponents of a nominee. In this case, no opponents were heard. It's a public hearing. And the second part is a statement by the nominee. And the third part is the questioning by council members. You'll find the first part rather unhelpful if you want to get a sense of what is going on. The second part and third part, the nominee statement and questioning by the council, more helpful, but only to the extent to see that there was no inquiry into the judicial philosophy of the candidates who are becoming judges in our state here in Massachusetts. We think that there's a series of these videos online. Please review them and give us any comments that you might have. The Fatherhood Coalition does have a website, www.fatherhoodcoalition.org. We have a hotline for men and fathers in difficulties at 617-SAD, S-A-D, DADS, D-A-D-S. Please keep watching, and thank you for picking up on this online video, and please get involved and help make the judiciary a more effective and better place for men and fathers to get justice. Thanks.
I apologize for the delay we had today. We had a lengthy hearing. approve a 10-day swearing in of a state representative from the North End also, so that's how we get working. Normally, we're very active. Some of the councils are probably wondering back in here, due to the extension, some may not be returning, but we're going to move this hearing at this time. So I'd like to start, introduce myself. I'm Tom Foley of the Council of the 7th District, and I have here in front of us, to my left is former Judge Merrigan, Western Mass, and Councilor Maryland Devaney from the Watertown area. Dear Councilors, I am pleased to nominate Margaret R. Bisman to the position of Associate Justice of the Village District Court. I submit this nomination for the advice and consent of the Executive Council pursuant to Part 2, Chapter 2 of the Constitution of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and accordingly on the address may be convenience. Sincerely, Bob Patrick. Would you, Margaret, take a couple minutes to introduce who you are with you here?
Certainly. First, my husband, Dave Fontaine. Steve Sullivan, his wife, Elizabeth Dean, and Liz will be one of my witnesses. Susan Garvin, Stephen Meltzer, and John Shea. John Shea is an attorney in the city of Worcester, and he sits on the planning board. He's actually the chairman of the planning board with me. Steve Meltzer is an attorney in private practice in Framingham, but he worked with me at the public defender's office for a number of years when he was a person practice. Susan Garvin is a court reporter, and she's been an official court reporter for, I believe, 20 years, and we've known each other professionally and personally for about that long. Liz Deneen headed the sexual crimes unit for the Hampton County District Attorney's Office. She's just recently retired, and she's now chairing, I believe, the Criminal Justice Department at Baypath College. And those are my
Firstly, Representative Norton,
thank you.
Would you like to say a couple words, Representative?
Very briefly, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I heard that my good friend and fellow counsel was hearing me today through our mutual friend Steve Stone, and obviously on the State House News Service. And just very briefly, I've had the honor to be a member of the bar for 19 years. I think for every single one of those 19 years, several years as an assistant district attorney, and the last 14 years in the practice of majority of criminal defense. I've dealt with Margaret Bisman. I've lost count of the number of cases, and the professionalism that she always displays, the preparedness she always displays. I've called her on numerous occasions when I was scratching my head on a thorny issue of the law, criminal defense, and even on some probate family issues, and always prepared. And it sets the highest standard for members of the bar to aspire to. And so I fully recommend Margaret Bisman today, and she will be a tremendous addition to the bench. And I was in that court for a year when I was an assistant district attorney. It's a great court to sit in, and I know she will bring it to even greater heights. So thank you.
Thanks, Rev. I appreciate your comments. Thank you for being here.
I just want to thank the representative. He's my hero. I thank you for your service. And glad you're home safe with your family.
Thank you. My mentor in the United States Army is Colonel Stone. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to sign your witnesses, please sign your advice?
John Shea.
Welcome, John.
Dr. Foley, thank you. It's my pleasure to speak on behalf of Margaret Bisman today. I'm honored the opportunity to speak before this body. As a kid, I was in blankets, always carrying notes with me. I want to put in context how I know Margaret. I know her from two different spheres. As past president of the Willis County Bar Association, very active member, I've known Margaret, although we didn't have cases together. I've observed her in court on multiple occasions. I can tell you, in motion sections where I've been sitting in the back listening to her argue, she's always articulate and her arguments well-reasoned. Even cases that I may not know the substantive law, I come out understanding some. Last spring, the appeals court sat in Worcester, and I haven't done much appellate work. I haven't had an argument before appeals court in probably 15 to 16 years. But I always think of the people there as being the cream of the crop. And I can tell you, the cream of the crop that day, for their sitting, was the case that Margaret argued. I think that I've observed her also in the probate court where most of my work is, and less than Margaret's. And I observed her learn a body of law in a very short period of time for a case that she picked up to help someone work free. And not only is it a body of law, the practice in probate court is much different than in district court or superior court or any other court. And she learned the nuances, again, very, very quickly. So another thing about Margaret is I think she possesses an innate ability to understand what's just and what's right. I've talked with her over the years about cases that she's handling, clients that she's represented, accused of the most heinous crimes. Yet she's always been able to show some compassion, some sympathy, and some understanding for the victims. And I think that's a tremendous balance. Some of those victims often would be family members of her client. That didn't interfere with her self-advocacy, but that's another component I think it's good for a judge to have. I know Margaret better from the planning board. I happen to be the chairperson for the planning board of the city of Worcester. Margaret joined us about 4 years ago. She had to learn another whole new body of law, land use planning, zoning, subdivision control law. She had to learn a whole field, engineering, as much of what we do, frankly, review engineering. Margaret was a very quick study. She also had to learn the planning process or the decision-making process for a quasi-judicial body of 5, and it was a little bit of a learning curve, but she's a quick study. She did a very good job. I found Margaret always be courteous, articulate, and she possesses a true sense of fairness. These hearings that come before us at the planning board often are highly charged. You could have a few neighbors on a small cul-de-sac with hills and grass and trees behind them, and suddenly a developer wants to come in and put in 30 duplexes or mixed use, or you bring in something that the neighbors have always considered their property. And you can imagine how highly charged people can be. They're often self-represented, the neighbors, or sometimes neighbors come with their elected officials, city council people, or state reps, state senators. Margaret was always, in those hearings, able to show a steady and even temperament. She also never came to those hearings with a preconceived notion of what the outcome should be. She always listened to both sides, and I watched her change her mind on occasion during the course of an argument, but she listened, and she was respectful. She was also always prepared. As a chairperson, sometimes you don't have to be as prepared. Usually we're running a meeting but getting into the nitty-gritty. I've always looked to Margaret for understanding the nuances of what was going on. Her demeanor has consistently been professional and courteous, yet if necessary, firm. I believe, I have an uncle who's about 93 years old. My uncle says common sense is not very common, he says. Well, Margaret possesses a tremendous amount of common sense, and I think if she's approved, that will serve this body, the people that come before her, the residents of this Commonwealth, very well. In summary, she's bright, articulate, caring person, and I think she possesses 3 things that make a great judge: intelligence, a keen sense of fairness, and compassion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
I'd just like to comment and say, first of all, I am elected to city council a lot of times. Don't get excited. I make $2,500 a year. But I go to a lot of planning boards, but that's a hazardous job. And she does, so she doesn't got the hook.
But we get paid very well.
I know, they all do, but I know what you mean about, we moved up to 9th in density out of 300 Twin Towns and cities because of this kind of stuff. Because of the zoning didn't, it allows it. It's sad. Really, yeah, I'm able to. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Yes, sir.
Steve Bell.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Again, I'd like to just, point out the context of how I know Margaret. When I finished my clerkship and started as a real lawyer in the Worcester office of the Public Defender's Office, Margaret was a few years ahead of me, had the office next to me, and became my de facto supervisor. She was always there when I needed her, and I guess to put it plainly, there are some basic lessons that I learned from Margaret, and number one was her preparedness. I learned that no matter what you had to do to make sure that you understood both the case and the person that you were representing, you did it. Margaret was the one who was first in the office in the morning. She was the one when I was on my way home. I would stop at the jails to meet with clients. she was always there. She was still there when I left. Margaret was the person who I turned to and who was available to me to be a mentor. And she was a mentor in more than just the nitty-gritty and the technical aspects of practicing in the courts. I was able, because we're also assigned to the same courts many times, to observe how she handled herself in court, and any success that I had, I give credit to Margaret because I emulated her style, the way she came into a courtroom, took over and set the agenda in any hearing that she was advocating in, and she was second a mentor for me to understanding and taught me the role that the public defender played in the system. And Mr. Shea talked about how Margaret is a strong advocate. But what I learned from Margaret is that she's not only a strong advocate because the defendant, that particular person, deserved that, but our system deserved that. And, I took that lesson with me, and I still think of Margaret when I think of the situation where maybe it's a little difficult to represent a client, or I see that Margaret is representing somebody who society may not value. And I see that I understand from what I learned by watching her that she's defending our system as much as she's defending that individual person. I've also had the opportunity to serve with Margaret on a nonprofit board where Margaret was both a member and president, and where I also became president at one point. And again, I had the opportunity to use Margaret as my role model in both running the board, helping to understand the nonprofit and its place in society, and also gaining her help in understanding and in learning how to help out with respect to the population, the distance house, and the actual administration of the nonprofit. And right up to the present, so that was 15 years ago when I first met Margaret, and I even asked Margaret to help me on a civil case. I haven't tried many cases lately. Margaret has tried many cases, many of them lately. And I had a case which was careening toward trial. I asked Margaret to assist me and become trial counsel in that case. It was a civil case. She agreed to do so, and as soon as the other side heard that Margaret was going to be counsel, they quickly settled. When I was...
Was she paid for the value of what she brought to the case?
Absolutely.
Time coffee, 2 coffee mugs.
When I was a public defender, my then 3-year-old son would send me off to work every morning and tell me to do justice, Dad. And I think that, thank goodness for Margaret, because she taught me how to do justice, and I think that if she's appointed and if she actually serves as a justice of the district court, and it'll serve this Commonwealth and every person who comes before her and every person in that courtroom, staff as well as people who come before the court to have their cases heard, to have justice done. So I thank you. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Thank you. Just going to introduce Councilor Michael Callen.
You do.
Yeah.
Susan Garden.
Councilor Foley and members of the council. Others here have spoken to you, Margaret, based on what they know of her as a lawyer a member of Civic Board, a mentor. I'd like to give you a different perspective based on my unique position as a court stenographer who sees her daily in her professional capacity, but more importantly, someone who sees her as a daughter, a sister, and a dear friend. I've spent my career as an official court reporter in many courthouses in this Commonwealth, and I was introduced to Margaret more than 15 years ago in Worcester. I shortly thereafter bumped into her on the Green Line, heading to Government Center. She recognized me and thoughtfully remembered my name. We spoke until our stop, and we said our goodbyes, and I at that time called her Maggie, as I had heard others call her. She later gently suggested to me that she preferred the more formal Margaret. That moment crystallized something I've come to learn about Margaret. She is at heart a serious and a formal person, notwithstanding her genuine warmth and her easygoing nature. I see that in the easy rapport she has with the waitresses at Matt's Diner in Worcester, who greet her at lunchtime with hugs and cries of, "Ah, it's Margaret!" Well, I get the polite nod and we get seated. I see that in the way she establishes an instant connection when meeting new people. On a trip to New York last year, I watched as she engaged other travelers, asking real questions about their work and their lives, genuinely interested in the easy conversation that flows from the answers. I see that time and time again in the Worcester Courthouse. Unscheduled matters arise at meeting counsel. Court personnel seek out Margaret. They know she'll step in. She'll do the small things to keep the process moving. I see that when she's asked to accept cases for clients that have been unable to communicate with their prior lawyers. Once again, Margaret's ability to speak plainly and encourage her clients to focus on the issue is resolve many difficulties. I see it in the way she channels her late mother, Betty Goodman. Margaret often speaks with awe of the role model that her mother represented to her. Raising 8 children alone, Mrs. Goodman set very high standards of accountability, performance, but always tempered with thoughtfulness. All qualities that Margaret would need a short time later when she assumed guardianship of her 6 young nieces and nephews for a period of years. Margaret coordinated their daily routines of the children, her then ailing mother, and her own career responsibilities. Margaret would tell you that her mother's death with dignity at home and the successful transition from childhood to teen and young adulthood of these children are her proudest accomplishments. So please don't mistake Margaret's seriousness as her lacking a sense of humor. She's witty, and she sees the appropriate humor in everyday human situations. I see Margaret every day before 9 o'clock entering the courthouse, impeccably dressed, sporting high heels, carrying her impossibly filled tote bag and briefcase, ready to handle her many cases. I believe that the word multitasking was coined as a direct result of the need for a word to describe how Margaret accomplishes all she has to do on her to-do list each day. Sundays, however, she carves out time for her family, her friends, and her beloved dog. She and I have a long-standing commitment to our Scrabble game. I bring the Globe crossword puzzle, which she works on while I play my tiles. Remember, I said she's a multitasker. And I can personally attest to her keen knowledge, as I've too often ended up on the losing end of our fierce competition. Sitting in my front row seat in this state's many busy courthouses these past 24 years, I feel I've developed a good sense of what qualities are common to all outstanding judges. They are well organized, they are deliberate and calm, and above all, they are well-mannered and fair. Members of this council, I say to you, Margaret Goodman has these qualities in abundance. Thank you.
Well, that's a question.
Sure.
Has she been in courtroom for even the court order?
I have seen her, yes. I have seen her, yes.
Okay. So the prosecution.
Your testimony written long hand.
That was my question. That was my question. You still do that?
I did have a problem with how quickly Attorney Shea was speaking, but that's for a different minute.
Mike, is this the first stenographer that since I've been here that's been before
Yes.
testified? Which I think was excellent because oftentimes in trials, cases I've been involved in, maybe it goes to the jury or to the judge, you kind of look for the court reporter's reaction. Oftentimes you like to go up and ask the court reporter, we don't want to lose this one, because they seem to
They see everything.
everything and how the testimony goes in.
We remain unbiased. We don't express opinions.
You got to be able to do it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you for your personal perspective. That was very good. I just wanted to ask, on a personal note, if you want to call Margaret, did you let people call you Sue?
Yeah, I'm less formal.
Well, I have a daughter Susan, and it's so sweet that people call her Sue. So I just wanted to know if you go by Susan, but that's a pretty name.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I first met Margaret approximately 3 years ago when she came to Hampden County to defend a very difficult defendant that had gone through 3 lawyers because he could not get along with anyone. The public defenders had reached out to Worcester and asked Margaret to come down, and all of the defense attorneys in the courtroom breathed a sigh of relief when Margaret assumed responsibility for the case and handed in her appearance on the case. So that's when our relationship began. I made sure she had all the files that she needed to handle the case, and I had an opportunity to speak to her briefly about the murder case and where it had occurred and where the case was going in terms of whether or not she needed to file motions in terms of motions that had not yet been filed by because other lawyers had handled the case. The one thing I noticed right away was that Margaret was able to establish a relationship with this difficult client and with his large extended family. So every time we had hearings over the next 2 years regarding the case, it was very clear that she had gone to the jail. It was very clear that she had spent time explaining to her client what was happening and making him feel very comfortable. In addition to that, every single time we had a hearing, Margaret would spend time before the hearing talking to the defendant's family and after the hearing talking to the family to make sure that they understood what was going on. You don't always see that as a prosecutor. You don't always see defendants' families being very well informed, and sometimes defendants appear in the courtroom looking somewhat bewildered. It was very clear she took her responsibility as his advocate very, very seriously. And she proved to be a very, very tough adversary. We became friends. But every time I knew I had to deal with Margaret in court, I made sure I kept current with the case law dealing with any specific issue related to the case, that I went to the scene a number of times during the day as well as night, that I had talked to all of my experts and stayed on top of the DNA, et cetera, because I knew that she had done that. This woman came from Worcester to prosecute this case, yet she knew exactly where this had happened. She knew where people had been prior to the murder in terms of downtown Springfield. She was a very quick study, as you've already heard, in terms of making sure she knew all the players involved in the case, their reputations, because some of the witnesses were a little shaky. I believe he was catching her. But the other thing that's already been mentioned that really struck me is intermittently throughout the case, she would ask, how is the victim's family doing? He was dead, but his mother, his sisters, his father came, and cousins came, and she would say, how are they doing? Very rarely do you see that type of compassion and interest in terms of the victims in the case. It didn't prevent her from performing her role and being an excellent advocate, but it was genuinely sincere. She knew how to advocate in terms of the different judges in Superior Court in Hampden County. And the reason I say that is because this is someone who basically had been in the Worcester County area, and when she came to Hampden cast of characters for her to deal with, and she, again, made it a point to get to know different judges. I saw her in various courtrooms, watching people, watching the judges, because she knew that during the course of the pendency of the case, that she would have to appear in front of them. She ended up handling 4 different cases in Hampden County against some of my colleagues in the DA's office. And the feeling in our office was Margaret Guzman is an excellent lawyer. She's well prepared, she knows the law, she's a tremendous advocate, she's courteous, she's respectful, and what she says, what she means. There were no games with Margaret in terms of discovery, there were no games about she'd say something to you in the hall and do something different in the courtroom. She also made a point of getting to know the probation officers, the court officers, the stenographers in Hampden County, because when she came to our county during the 2 or 3 years that we were traveling, it was not uncommon for a stenographer to say, "Hey, Margaret," and give her a hug, or one of the probation officers to sit down and have a chat. She quickly became someone that everyone really liked and really, really respected as an advocate. The other thing that I remember on a personal level, while our case was pending, my husband, Stephen, was in Baghdad for almost a year. And before Margaret ever began talking about the business of our case, she would always say to me, "How, Steve, how are you? Is there anything I can do for you?" That's the human level that you've heard other people refer to, which was just so kind and so compassionate that I deeply appreciated. She is someone who also mentored younger lawyers. And I found that fascinating because, again, she came to our county, a relatively unknown commodity, and very quickly after she was there, I would see young defense attorneys approach Margaret and ask for help about whether or not their argument made any sense, or what do you suggest I say during the sentencing argument? Do you think I should file this particular motion regards to an evidentiary hearing? And she took the time to sit down and talk to people that were part of the public defender's office, some people that were private attorneys, as well as the bar advocates. And that's why people really respected her and admired her, because of her kindness. Her demeanor was always outstanding, always outstanding. She could be in the thick of a battle and just stay calm. Her experience is unquestioned. She would be a tremendous judge because she's been in the trenches. She's been in every court, probate court, superior court, district court, as well as the appeals court. She's practiced in every arena. She knows how hard it is to balance everything and to juggle everything, and she knows how hard it is to deal with difficult clients. I've seen her do it. I admire her. I respect her. I think she would be such an asset to the bench. I think as a lawyer in this Commonwealth, it would be a pleasure to practice in front of her, and I speak for my former colleagues in the district attorney's office. Never, never, never once did I ever hear one disparaging comment about her. I always heard she was tough, she was experienced, she was prepared, and she was fair. What more could you ask for a judge?
Thank you very much. Excuse me, Elizabeth?
Yes.
I just want to say that's very helpful. It's always very informative for me when opposing counsel comes and speaks in such strong terms as you have about somebody who's been out there.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. It really is. Thank you.
You really mean it. It's clear and it's very helpful.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody here that prepared to speak in opposition to this nomination? Having heard none, I would ask you to give a shot.
Would you like me to stand?
No. Relax and let it go.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank my witnesses and the other supporters who came. When I was thinking about who to choose, it's like being able to invite people to a very limited private party. And I have to say, I picked 4 people whose qualities I admire, whose integrity and professionalism is outstanding, and they are at the top of every field that they are in. They are the best people that I know to represent a perspective of my life. So I thought that even before you said that thing about me. It's very odd to hear people talk about me. I'm usually talking about other people. Susan mentioned my mother, and I was thinking very much about how I would present myself today. I know that you've seen my resume, you've heard about my legal career, which is, I've loved my career. I've had a great legal career. I didn't come to it on the normal road. I was in my early 30s when I got my law degree, but I came out of the gate running. I was so happy and pleased to have this opportunity to do this really, really privileged work. But I could never have done it if not for my mother. And I know everybody loves their mother. And and this is not a battle between my mother is better than your mother, although she is. But this is my story is only possible because I had an Irish mother who was born 3 weeks after the stock market crash, who lived the hardest life in the Depression. When she was 3, her father died. There was no welfare. There was no food stamps. There was no relief. They used to get a $5 relief monthly stipend, and my grandmother could get lard and things of that nature. But they did it by the skin of their teeth and their knuckles, and of the 8 of them, they didn't fall into crime. They didn't fall into savagery. They worked hard. They battled, and it did something to their personalities. It brought out the very best in them. She was the baby of her family, and she is, in my mind, knowing all of my aunts and uncles, she had an unbelievable wit and intellect. But at 15 years old, she quit school so that she could scrub floors for the nuns at St. Vincent's Hospital to contribute to her family. And she could have been a much better lawyer than I am. She could have been a physician. She could have been anything. But she chose to be a contributor to her family's well-being. And she never, ever, in my entire upbringing, ever spoke in sad terms about the struggles they had. She always said, I had a great childhood. I was happy. We would go down, I don't know if this is a story, that they'd go down to the railroad tracks and grab coal, and they would bring it home, because I've heard that before, and maybe it is true. And she was Irish, so sometimes there was a little bit of a yarn to her stories. But I know they struggled. But they turned that struggle into an attribute rather than an excuse. There were 8 of us in our family, 7 girls and 1 boy. My father was of Mexican and German heritage. He was an immigrant to this country. They lived in Worcester, and we were of moderate, rural, working class people. We moved to Oxford, the suburb, after my father had a job at American Optical in Southbridge. My mother was a city girl. She didn't have a license. We had 1 car, we had 1 television, we had a refrigerator that you opened the door, and then the little freezer door came down, and it was always loaded with ice and frost. But it was a good life. I never slept in my own bedroom, but without anybody else until I was in my 30s. We had a happy childhood, but we had a leadership with someone whose morals were unquestioned, whose work ethic was astounding, and to be copied. She was with the court officer. Confiscate that purse. Sorry, that happens to me. So I could go on all day about my mother, but really I just want to say this. I learned about thrift from her. I learned about negotiating from her. When I have negotiated a plea, it's because I went to yard sale after yard sale with my mother, who needed, a chair, or a set of dishes, or, an extra bed. And she could negotiate like nobody could. She had very little assets, but she had all kinds of skill. She would find the worst. It's chipped, it's dusty, it's broken, but I'll take it off your hands. I watched her negotiate without shame. And it is what I learned to do. And I realized when I have all these years, they've made fun of me for my negotiating skills on plea bargains, but I realized it started at the yard sale. My mother taught me, you always point out the weaknesses and get your best price. I learned work ethic from her. She would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and she would walk to church. And when she got back from church, she would start breakfast. She would get us all ready for school. We would be.
All right. Now, I was going to say this, but if anybody's got cell phones on, please. Oh, sorry.
Listen, I love my house.
I was expecting a call, and I never take it here, and I did, and I...
Don't apologize.
My phone never rings. I like if we can get through the meeting before 4 o'clock, everybody, so.
The nice attributes that people have talked to me about are ones that I learned at the Hanson level. And the greatest attributes that she taught me were compassion and integrity. She always said, your word is your bond. And I didn't really know what that meant until much later in my life, when I started to realize that a reputation that you have as an attorney is the greatest stock you have. You can have the most thriving practice, but if people believe you to be a liar or untrustworthy, then you can never overcome it. And she believes that if you are unwilling to do a selfless act for another human being, you are not worthy of receiving any goodness. And that means doing it without publicity. That means the random, anonymous acts of kindness. My father left our family when I was 10, and it was very, very poor. I mean, we really hit financial difficulties. My mother scraped together to fight to keep our home and to keep our family intact. But I can still remember days when she would open the cupboards, grab a brown paper bag, and she'd be putting groceries in there, and she'd say, let's go, we're going down to the so-and-so's house. She would bring our groceries to a family that had less. And we'd go to their house, and she'd clean, and she'd say, go and you fold the laundry, she'd talk to the mother. And I would say to her, but we have little. And she said, they have us. Those were the lessons that I learned from a woman who didn't go to school beyond the age of 15. When I got my law degree, there was a photographer at Joeu, and my mother said, come over here, I want a picture of us with our law degrees. And it was the most true statement she had made. There are a million stories that I could tell you as to why I have the attributes that have been spoken about, but I can only attribute that to my mother. I miss her. I miss her physically. She taught me how to play Scrabble. And it's the reason that I can play Scrabble with Susan is because my mother taught me. She was so smart, and she had no formal education. When I think about being a judge, I think about the best and the worst people that I've been in front of as judges. And I was never in front of you when you were a judge. But I think you were probably a very fair judge. I've actually heard nice things about when I was a judge. It is an awesome responsibility not to be taken lightly, and no decision is to be made, I think, for any reason other than it is the right and just reason. Retribution, grandstanding are not appropriate for the court. I've seen judges display those kind of attributes, and it's been very hard to sit in silence against those. I can only say that if I am confirmed and I sit, and I have a difficult decision to make, I will probably always channel my mother. She has the greatest sense of right and wrong, injustice and fairness, and compassion. And those are the attributes that I hope that I do possess. And that if I am lucky enough to sit, that I will exercise my duties with those attributes. And thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. I'd like to start on the end, please.
Fine, motion. Thanks, Steve. Thank you.
Councilor Devaney?
Thanks for talking to me again. First of all, I could identify with everything you're saying because that's the greatest generation. Let's face it, I'm mothers. And you got a marriage mother, I had an Italian mother. And
No difference except
no, and that's
we have to say that's what it's
right. And it's your first generation too. And and my mother had to quit school to have her brothers. That's how it was, for her brothers to graduate from high school, and she went out to work and read no 12 hours a day. So, like your mother, I can identify with that. And and that was the saddest thing that she ever tried to do. She tried to go at night to get her GED, and she used to fall asleep, so she never was able to do that. That was something, but I can identify. I have to just pick up on something because I laughed when you said it. I haven't heard the expression, like nobody's business, since my mother. Because my mother would say, they're driving up the street like nobody's business. And you said that. It was so nice to hear that some of those phrases are still alive and well. But, your mother was special. She could bring up 8 children alone. And in those days, this had no welfare. And they did it, and none of your sisters or brother went to prison, So, I'm glad you have solo practice, you public defender, you have all of these. Tell me, how did you decide to go and do solo practice after you had been in a different field?
I met my husband David about 6 months after my mom died, and we were married only 9 or 10 months after we met. And he had his own business. He never worked for anybody. He came out of the Army, and he got a degree in hairdressing, and he opened his own shop, and he's always worked for himself. And the fear was that I could never do it. And you're so afraid that you will fail. But I watched him year after year, and he'd have with 6 months, he'd have a bad 6 months. He would try something, it wouldn't succeed. He would try something, it would be fabulously successful. And he never worried. He slept soundly every night, and I thought, what am I so afraid of? There were parts of practice that I had not been able to do, and I wanted to try new things. And so seeing someone I was close to do it gave me the courage to actually do it. And I did, and it turned out to be a fabulous move. It was the right move for me.
Yeah, well, I've said it time again, I'm not a lawyer, but I think it's wonderful you can bring to the bench that perspective of being, in solo practice. When that lawyer comes before you, you identify with that person. You have to pay the bills, in that office. So I'm very pleased with that. Tell me, what, out of all of your cases, there's one standout that difficult that you would do criminal defense, right? Can you relate to a couple anyway? What was the worst? What was the most rewarding couple?
I had a particularly horrible murder case. A father killed his son, one of his sons, and attempted to kill the other son. And he was had a long history of mental health, and he was on a large regimen of prescriptions, and he took himself off it with the tacit approval of his doctor. And 6 months later, he was completely psychotic. And he was watching his children. An otherwise great father, no violence in his past at all, and he just lost it. I was called in right away to represent him over the weekend. In fact, my husband and I went up to the local jail where he was held and spoke with him, and he didn't even look human. He was completely out of it for 10 months. He went to the state hospital and he became medicated, and the end was that about 6 months later, he was the person that he was before he took himself off the medication. The son that lived, the 13-year-old son, and his ex-wife and his whole family did not want him to go to jail for the rest of his life. They understood that he was psychotic when the events occurred. I worked with a very, very fabulous prosecutor in Worcester who we were able to work out a disposition that had him in jail for a very long period of time, but also put him on probation for nearly the rest of his life with requirement that he maintain his mental health. The sadness, the just utter, sheer sadness, with not a fight over money, not a drug deal gone bad, not a crime of passion, just unexplained, irrational, psychotic behavior that tore what was otherwise a beautiful family. That moved me, and I've been practicing for many years at that point. That case stays with me still. I still think about that. I think about the 13-year-old who was strong enough to fight his father off. And when it was a tragic, tragic story. I had a really great happy ending though. And
How did you choose that area of law? That's
the society purposes. It's my mother, you take the worst of the worst when no one else will do it. And I believe that there's a judgment about my clients who are first charged. As soon as they're charged, people judge them. Well, I'm not in the business of judging. I'm in the business of making sure that if the process is fair, then the right result will come about. The only process cannot be fair unless I can.
Don't you think that's what judges are supposed to do, go by the law, not go by their personal?
Oh, absolutely.
But as an
advocate, when I was as a lawyer, my personal feelings take that. I take that and I understand that someone needs to humanize my client because that's important. As a judge, it would be the judge playing his role, the lawyers playing their role, all to the best of their ability will help the best result. That's always important.
So tell me when you applied. First time?
I applied the first time 2 years ago for a superior court, an opening. And I did have an interview with the JNC, but I did not advance beyond that. When Judge Specto from Worcester vacated his superior court seat, I applied again. I had another interview with the JNC, and I did it, but I was not chosen for that spot. I received a call from the JNC indicating that there was an opening in the district court in my county, and if I had interest in that, I should let them know.
You're still in the 18 months?
I was, yes. And I indicated that I had interest in it, and that was the process.
I was very pleased with your choice of witnesses because they are very diverse from, your experience being on the planning board to opposing attorney, and to another attorney in the court before. I thought that was very good. But I have to ask you, if you're appointed and Elizabeth Deneen comes before you, will you recuse yourself?
I don't think so. You mean because she spoke at my hearing?
No, but I mean, it seems like you have, there is a friendship, there's, personal acquaintance.
Well, we don't socialize. I haven't actually seen Liz since I stopped practicing out in Hampton County. I would have to think about that. I think that if I felt that I could not be impartial under any circumstance, I would recuse myself. And that, I think, would have to be based on whatever particular circumstance was in front of me.
Well, I just bring that up because, there's any appearance of, undue influence. That's all I'm concerned about. And she's a wonderful person, and I said there's no question about that. But she did mention that when she went before you, she wouldn't have, I just
Right.
wanted to
And I guess because it didn't occur to me because she's not practicing likely that she would come before me. But if she did, I would certainly consider it. I couldn't say blanket right now, but I would certainly consider that. If I felt that there was a conflict, I would address that, and I would not put any of the parties one to favor one or the other. So I would try. But I couldn't say with certainty that I would consider it to be a conflict for her to come before me.
Another question I'll be asking, make a little. Okay. I really anything else that comes to mind that I would ask you about. That's one thing. Oh, I know what it was. We talked about, when we talked about the letters that go to the JNC, and you were very open about that you would, you told me the names and everything, and I appreciate that, because we do have one that was closely connected here and would refuse to, and I really appreciate that, because the public record law does not require you to do that, so I really thank you for that. Thank you.
Councilor
Thank
Calhoun?
you.
I don't have any questions on this. I enjoyed the testimony of the commissioner and the witness asked some speak back on this petition. We just went down to the House of Representatives to swear in newspapers and just about the Boston News. And while I was there, three representatives spoke from the House.
Thank you, Judge, very much. I know all of it. If it was
Councilor Anderson?
And Joe Smith,
Nice to see you, nice to see you. I do have a couple questions. Okay, so by my math, about 13 years at CPCS? Yes. I was an intern there for about 2 years before that. So not her.
And then, I'm confused about,
The overlapping?
so you were in private law practice since then, and then these other things were how you rounded out your income, I'm assuming, correct?
Well, some were not okay.
Okay, some will volunteers, but those were all the things you did since you left CPCS?
Yes.
Is there anyone on CPCS that, anyone on the Judicial Nominating Commission that you know from the days of CPCS?
I didn't know, I knew two people on the JNC as attorneys in New Zealand, but they were not on the PCS, and they were not, I knew one of them was Elizabeth Morris, I knew who she was, but we never had a case. And Rick Van Nostrum, who was the bar president, I had not really met him, maybe one occasion, but I had no affiliation with anyone on the JNC, and I was not familiar with any of the other ones.
Is that right? Okay, so, doesn't seem that you have a, okay. With CPCS, public defender, that was all criminal work, right? As far as civil work goes, is that from '05 to date?
Yes.
And I'm assuming you still do criminal defense, private pay,
I
right?
do.
And do you do any public pay work?
I take murder assignments.
Okay.
And I take, it isn't a particularly difficult defendant or a difficult case. The judges have asked me to take particular cases. And I've
Special extended for pay. And then what about, how much have you earned through public defending or through, taxpayers supported legal services since you've been a solo practitioner? How much you earned a year from that?
I think last year, my W-2 or the 1099 that I got from CPCS was 56 to 60,000. I'm not particularly sure.
Okay, and then private pay on top
My
of that?
private stuff, that was probably 80 to 100.
On top of that?
Yes.
Okay. And that's mostly, is the private pay stuff mostly criminal?
Yes.
And then for civil, what do you do?
Well, I've
Personal injury,
I've
claim?
had a personal injury, one.
Okay.
That's closed. I have had two probate matters. One was a family member, my nephew.
You say probate, you mean divorce?
No, it was child custody.
Okay.
He received custody of his children.
Okay, the family matter, as opposed to probate being wills, trusts, and estates.
Right, no, I don't do it.
Okay.
I prefer those out.
Yes.
And another probate was a female who was the wife of my plumber who does work for her husband.
So you do
that was
family,
for-
you do family law the way I do criminal law. Your relative and a
Right.
first time offender.
Right, but I did do some, I had affiliation, Attorney Meltzer talked about a civil case. It was a contract dispute that was going to go to trial. So I got up to speed on that. It ended up settling, but I worked on that. I've done some defense work, small claims work. I represented people at unemployment hearings, at hearings before the registry of motor vehicles.
So you're the standard country lawyer, but you're
am.
very experienced with criminal work.
Exactly, that's a good way to start.
Yeah, I consider
It
myself kind of a country
was
lawyer.
to the country, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm in the country, it's easy, in Salem, I feel I am anyway. Now, I am concerned about, tell me about your donation pattern prior to applying for this job. You applied more than once, right?
Yes, it was, I applied in '07.
Yeah.
And then in February of '08.
Okay. So,
And I think you might have, I don't have it with me, thank you.
prior to your application in '07, well, prior to these donations here, the last 3 years.
No, those are all the donations I've ever given. I went all the way back to '02.
And let me tell you why that bothers me.
Yeah.
This is happened before, maybe you can, what caused you to suddenly become a political donor?
Well, I supported my city council member. I supported Shannon O'Brien back in '02. I have supported state legislators, our registrar of probate. All of that occurred many years ago. I have been a resident of Massachusetts my entire life, with exceptions of time away at college. And I wrote a letter of condolence to Governor Dukakis when he lost his run for the presidency. I was a big supporter, and as a young person, I was very much enthralled in that campaign, and I was heartbroken when he lost. And after he lost, we had only Republican leadership in the state. I was very excited when Governor Patrick, then candidate, announced he was one of a number of candidates. I was at a number of house parties where he would speak. There were no donations, but it was kind of a listening and talking, informational. And I became very excited about the information I gave. That was before he was governor, and it was certainly well before I even considered applying for the judgeship. And I think the rest of my donations are, I don't know if $250 is a lot. I don't know what other people donate. I'm fairly modest means, my husband and I, so for us, that was a lot of money at that time. So I certainly didn't do it in anticipation of an application for a judgeship. In fact, I was not even considering it.
So you weren't considering in 2006, when you and your husband gave $750, you weren't anticipating applying for a judgeship in '07? Okay. So now, did anybody reach out to you in any way to apply for this position?
No.
Okay. Or previously in '07?
No.
And, as far as your bar association experience, I see that, well, why don't you explain to me what your bar association involvement is? So over the past,
How long was that?
Well, I was strongly encouraged by the former past president, Mr. Shea, for sitting behind me, to join the Wisconsin Bar Association, and I was on the criminal justice section. I have been a member of the Mass Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers for many years. I filled out a spot on the board of directors. There was a death of a member, and they also kind of filled the spot out. First thing was about the Mass Bar Association, when I went into private practice, I joined them. I think when I became a lawyer, there was an introductory membership to the American Bar Association, so I think I paid $25 for that, but in a card. And I've had membership. I'm very busy on the board committees that I'm on, so I've never been able to address a lot of time to the Bar Association.
Good, that's what I want to hear. So, as far as the Worcester County Bar Association, when did you join them?
Maybe 07. I was a member when I first became a lawyer.
Right.
And then I was in the...
Did anybody advise you that, I know I'm interrupting you, so I'm sorry for that. Did anybody advise you in 07 that being more active in the Worcester County Bar Association would assist you in getting a judgeship? No? I find that lawyers that spend too much time with bar associations, it doesn't sound like you do, have too much free time on their hands. So I'm glad to hear that you're not involved.
My husband will be able to, if he was to testify, he would tell you that I do not have a lot of free time on my hands. And that's usually because I've been really active in really citizen involvement.
Right.
All but not pay, no pay whatsoever.
Right. But it's okay to get paid. I mean, that's okay.
Well, it is okay to get paid, but those are the places that I've affiliated myself with have been, especially the planning board, which has been an incredible experience. It really is just such a learning experience for me. But that is a lot of time committed in no pay.
And let me just ask you, is Coops on your original name? Okay. Well, right. Not yet. Thank you very much.
Judge Murray?
I just wanted to thank you. I just wanted to say that I was very glad that Susan Gavin brought up about the 6 children, because when we talked, I was very impressed with that you would take in the niece.
5 nieces and a nephew.
Yeah, she took in 6 children and for years and took custody when the family weren't able to, and that to me shows compassion and in your life to do this. That's not an easy task, and hard enough when you have your own children, to bring 6 children, I'm talking my friends, when you bring 6 children in with all, the problems that they have, I think that is commendable. The other thing is, I didn't ask about the contributions, because we had discussed that, and it was very...
Only the Judge Marion asked this question, now we go back to your second round. We haven't even finished. You said one question and we wanted more than that. Thank you.
Various witnesses, I think they help portray the various facets of what we are interested in terms of the quality of the judicial candidates. And I have no question about it. I'm very impressed with your background. You have a very good reputation. Judge Ruth is a tremendous man, and I talked to Black and seeing the Worcester down, and she's seen the things down, and she said you have an impeccable reputation. Well presented in courtroom, demeanor, preparation, skills, and she thinks it was a good position to bench and her was a block case. So I look forward to seeing you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was just want to add that I didn't ask about the contributions, so we had discussed that, and it was very early in Patrick's campaign, as you said, they were just initial costs and started out, so I see that differently than someone earlier that I voted on, so I think I just wanted to put that in the record, that I have no problem with that, so that's why I didn't ask. So I did, but again, I commend you for taking on 6 children and your husband. That must have been a whole change in life to,
would just recommend